All right, welcome back to the human resource planning session today. In the introduction, we talked about the importance of human resource planning, or HRP, within an organization. We've talked about the demand forecast, we've talked about the supply forecasting, we've talked about all of the necessary factors, the importance of HRP in an organization, the factors that will affect its effectiveness, and many more important points that the HR, as an HR practitioner, you must do what? You must have an understanding of. So in the previous session, we were starting the forecasting technique. Hence, we had to pause there. Now we will continue. Forecasting techniques in human resource planning. And what is the forecasting technique about? What factors must you consider, or what kind of technique will be required when you are conducting a forecast, either a demand forecast or a supply forecast, when you are, planning your human resource programs, or hiring and firing, promotions, and all other functions within the organization. All right. Now, I would like to share this important point with you. No organization is the same, right? So it's important for you to know that no technique is not a one-size-fits-all. Please leverage the technique that closely fits your organization and is best fitted for the business or the company that you are working with. Okay? Now there is a managerial judgment. The managerial judgment is a kind of technique where all managers sit together, they discuss their needs, right? And they arrive at a particular figure that will be required for future employees based on the demand for labor within a certain period of time. So at middle level management or at top level management, these key individuals come together, they discuss based on the trends, based on the experience, based on the trends of the organization, what they have seen, what they do, they now talk about it, and they now arrive at a particular figure that is adequate to use to leverage upon filling positions in the midterm or in the future. All right, this technique may involve bottom up. Up means that certain people are identified from top level management to middle to junior level, even to junior management level, or to other cadres that are not at the managerial level, where we say, okay, pick 2 from each department from different level, let's all sit together as a team, okay, and then we'll have this kind of conversation. We have top-down approach too, where it's coming from the top or it's coming from the bottom. Regardless of what approach you have chosen to engage, it is important that you pick the kind of technique that best fits you, so that you can have positive results, okay, that best suits your organization for positive result. Now we have the ratio trend analysis. This trend is one of the quickest techniques to use, which involves studying past ratios. So what that means is that you are looking at how many people do we need in filling up this particular role. In the past, how many persons did we work with? Now that we have grown, do we need more hands? Or are we still where we are 5 years ago, and do we maintain the figure? So between the number of workers, okay, especially let's say for example the sales department, between the number of workers we used 10 years ago or 5 years ago and now, how many more sales force do we need to be added to the sales force we have at the moment? So we look at this ratio and then we work with it. Now there are some cases where you know that the organization has grown maybe by 10% or by 50%. You know that we needed, for example, sales. We had 10 sales persons in the sales force, and the company as at 2 years ago was operating at this amount, or was operating at this capacity. Now we have doubled our operations. Do we also need to double our ratio in the sales force? So those are questions you are able to answer. If you are able to answer, then you are good to go. So with all of these questions being answered, forecasting based on this ratio and this trend, you are able to make some form of changes or allowances as the case may be. Then we have the workload technique. Here you assess the amount of work every person or team is engaged with. Are they overworked? Are they underworked? What tasks are they involved with? What projects are they involved with relative to the current staff that are taking up those projects or those tasks? And then you now look at your forecast. How many staffs do we need more? How many more staffs do we need to be able to meet our needs at the point of growth? Now, please bear in mind, it is not proper to have an overworked staff. You will not get the best of them. An overloaded employee will not deliver optimally on the job. So also an underworked staff, okay, will become redundant, and at the end of the day, it's not a win for yourself, the HR, for the business, as well as for what? The employee. Now, let's look at other techniques like the Delphi technique. Now, this method of forecasting personal need looks as solicits like the estimated personnel that is needed from different groups, usually managers. It's usually used at the managerial level. So it solicits estimates. We might not be able to give the exact number, but if we have an estimated value that we can use, what will that value or number be? We'll take this information from experts, people who have worked in that space long enough, who have been in that unit long enough to be able to determine what estimate will be proper to use when you are planning for your human resource per period. So we also look at experts on that are intermediaries, summarize the various responses and reports. So you can conduct surveys, and then you find your findings, you share your findings back to these experts. Okay, these experts could be consultants that are taken from outside of the organization, or people who already have experiences within that role within the organization. So you can actually do what? Predict. You can actually take up surveys, look for different intermediaries to ensure that you have a summary of the needs that might be required or what you need to be able to hit your goal when you are planning your HR. You summarize your surveys, and then you ensure that if need be, these opinions can be repeated at different times. So summaries and surveys are repeated until the experts' opinion begin to agree. So we can have different experts, whether internal consultants or external consultants, who need to come together to agree based on what, and then you can have a blend of both. You can have internal consultants or external experts coming together to conduct these surveys, and then you reach an agreement. Now we have the flow model technique. This technique is an approach used to predict the future needs of the organization, your employee needs of an organization at different staffing levels based on your workforce dynamics. Okay, you do an analysis of how staffs are moving from one department to the other, or how staffs are transferred from one local government or local region, that's your state, or to a different level. You can say, for example, in Nigeria, I'm moving from Lagos to Port Harcourt, from Port Harcourt to Ibadan, from the east to the south or to the northern region, from Kano to Abuja, from Abuja to Kaduna. Do we understand? So these areas is how often do we move people around our business, around the organization at different time. So you can do an analysis of what has happened in the past 5 years, in the past 3 years, and also make decisions based on that. You track entry, you track internal movement, you also track exit of employees. If you are able to track this, you have data based on this, it will be able to help you to predict the future staff needs that will be required to meet your goal. Then typically it also involves creating certain metrics that will help with transition. What are the probability rates? So if you don't have some existing data, you can do your analysis based on probabilities. If this is equals to this, what is the probability that this will be required? Such as promotion, attrition, that's the number of people leaving, promotion, moving somebody to the next level in career, for career growth. Then your retirement, what's the possibility that this person at this age will be retiring in next 3 to 5 years. And then you also look at factors like transfers. Okay, we need to transfer this person within department or even outside the location, as it were. Also, another technique you can consider is trend analysis. You are using historical data, HR data, based on your people. What is the history of the people within the organization? What's the rate of turnover? What's the rate at which we hire? Okay, what's the rate at which people leave the organization? What is the rate at which people have been promoted in the past, even where there are future projects or even based on the current trend? So you can use any of these techniques based on the uniqueness of your organization. Now let's talk about HR programming. All right, what is HR programming? Now, after HR has already done, you have forecasted your demand, you have done your needs analysis, you've identified those gaps, you already know what supply you need to fill up that particular position within the company. The vacancies should be filled as quickly as possible at the right time, okay, and with the right employees. Now there's the possibility that you will not be needing these staffs at the moment. However, you already have done this, and then you have put your documents together, your reports together, and then you are waiting for the right time to get the right employees. Now, once you are nearing that time, it is expected for HR to be proactive and begin to source for these people so as to meet your deadline way ahead, and not use the shotgun approach where everything has to be done at a rush, and at the end of the day we begin to experience stress, or we take up candidates that do not necessarily fit the role. So HR programming is a systematic approach of planning and scheduling of HR activities that aligns to the personnel, the demand for people, and the supply for people, ensuring that all vacancies are filled efficiently and effectively. That's just what we just talked about. It is a systematic way of making sure that your demand and your supply for staffs are aligned with your plans, and ensuring that whatever vacancies that you are trying to fill is done effectively and efficiently on time. So HR programming involves preparing in advance, way in advance, for meeting your staff needs based on the forecast that we have already put together, the demand of personnel, and the supplies that are available, whether it's existing workforce, their capabilities, or people that we are bringing in from outside. All right, now when you are talking about HR planning, what are the key important factors that you must consider? All right, we have talked about forecasting personnel demand and supply, where we must be able to estimate the number of and qualifications of people that we need for the needs for today and for the needs for tomorrow. You can look at market trends or based on the changes in technology. All right, we talked about the supply forecasting, which, as I said, cannot be overemphasized. We have talked about forecasting demand over and over again. We are repeating it here again. Forecasting our supply, assessing our current workforce. Now, I would usually like to advise HR, you're a newbie or you've been in the space for a while, when it comes to replacing people, except if you do not have such staffing quality of staff or abilities, capabilities within the organization, then you go outside. Otherwise, I would tell you, do an analysis of your staff strength. Ask yourself key questions. Who within us can be promoted or take up this particular role? Once you are able to give answers to them, you can conduct all the necessary requirements, analysis, trainings, tests, exams, internal exams to move the person there if the person passes. Or you can empower the person when you find out that, oh, here and there we have some gaps. We have identified these gaps, but training, mentoring, coaching can close that gap. Then please consider abilities, capabilities of persons within your organization first before you push it out to the public. Now you have considered forecasting personnel demands and supply. Now it's time to identify gaps. What gaps exactly is within the organization? We already have a plan. The business has a plan for her team, for the number of staffs per time, the number of people who will engage within the organization or from outside. Now let us find out if these gaps are available. You compare forecasting demand or forecasted demand with available supply. We have this demand. Are we able to meet this demand based on what we have, or we will need to get people from the outside? Here you are talking about, are we in surplus, are we in shortage, and how do we overcome this gap? How do we fill this gap? Number 3 factor, we must develop an HR program. All right. After we have planned and we have done our forecast, we have begun the programming and process, we are looking at recruitment planning. How are we going to recruit? What platforms are we going to be putting our job calls out there? All right. Do we even have a job call? Do we have these duties and responsibilities accurately, clearly spelled out before we put it out to the public or before we begin to engage people within the organization? What HR program as training and development, what training and development initiatives will you put on play? Okay, what will I develop in terms of training and development programs to help these people who will be engaging internally or what externally? Then succession planning. People are leaving. We are bringing in people to replace others, or we are opening up a new unit where we need new people to take up this particular project. So we need what? Succession. We need to plan. We need to plan and prepare those who will be taking up this role upon the exit of the old. Then we mentioned internal promotions. Remember, I mentioned that if you can have your way, all right, please, HR practitioners, consider first people who currently work with the organization. Why? Because they already have an idea, okay, of the big picture of the organization. So it's easier to work with them. You're not starting from scratch as against bringing people from the outside. However, where you need dynamism, all right, where you need uniqueness, fresh ideas, okay, fresh blood, as they say, and you do not have it within your organization, then please proceed to put the information out there so others can come in and do your business good. Schedule time and ensure that you're working at the right time. You cannot take up staffs when you don't need them. All right. And then if you're an employer of labor and you're listening on this training session today, I need you to understand that it is proper. It saves you a lot of time, energy, and stress when an exiting staff is able to join in the onboarding of a new employee, a new hire. All right. Don't bring in a new hire into your organization when there is nobody to properly onboard or induct this new hire into your business system. All right. So if somebody is leaving and they've given you their in lieu of notice, regardless if it's 5 days, 2 weeks, or 30 days in lieu of notice, or 3 months, ensure that before exit, a certain number of days is scheduled, is timed to onboard the new hire ahead of the exit of the old. Okay, so ensure that hiring, training, transitions, onboarding activities, I've mentioned it, are synchronized. Okay, so it's not somebody exiting and then we are back to square one. We are not sure what to do. Your organizational needs and its progress and growth are critical, for sustainability, for us not to do things properly. So please, HRs, take notice of this. Number 5, implementation and monitoring. After you have completed your analysis, your supply, your forecast, and you're already programming your entire, you're already putting in place a structure, programming your plans, putting pen to paper, structuring it stage by stage, and what is required for us to do per period, it is important that you consider monitoring your implementation process. So you have monitored, you have set it up, you have planned it already, you are already in implementation stage. Ensure that you also plan your monitoring phase. All right, your implementation phase is what HR programming is about. We have planned it. It's now time to program it and put it in play. In planning, ensure that you also consider monitoring and evaluation. So when you are executing your plan programs, be conscious of the fact that you need to track if those programs and that plan is effective. So you can also identify areas of adjustment. If you don't get this done, you will just be hitting the brick wall. You will not know what changes to make on the go, just like in the agile method. So we do things on the go, we make changes as we proceed. All right. You don't wait to the end of the project or to the end of the program, then you realize that, oh, this mistake was gone, let's go back to square one. So as you are executing your plans, implementing the plan, you are also consciously on a continuous basis tracking progress, tracking the outcome, identifying challenges, making adjustments as the need arises. It is important that your HR program must ensure seamless staffing without disruptions. All right, that is why I mentioned that you are making adjustments on the go. Don't wait to the end of the program and then you find out that, oh, we had this error, let's go back. As you are implementing each stage, each function, each factor, each stage of the plan, you are also monitoring and evaluating the process. You are tracking your progress. So ensure that you have a seamless staffing process without any form of disruption or minimal disruption. This is the purpose of human resource programming in the human resource planning function. The purpose is also to help you to optimize your workforce cost. Every time you have to go back to square one, you have wasted money. Now, HR, popularly in the past, cost was not our priority. Getting quality hand was our priority. But right now, in the business climate, as much as you are HR, remember we talked about being a human resource business partner. You must also be able to think like a business owner. You must ensure and understand that you are managing cost. If it cannot be minimized, if you cannot cut down cost, you should be able to manage cost and productivity to reduce wastage. Okay. Hence, you must be able to monitor and evaluate your processes, track progress, eliminate as much overhead cost or workforce cost as possible. Now, you are also to ensure that you need to improve your talent management processes, proactively planning rather than reactive hiring. I'd mentioned that as an example in the past, where employers just wake up one morning and realize that a staff is gone. There is no plan on ground to replace them. So rather than hire out of a reaction, you've already seen the signs way ahead. HR practitioners, please hear me. You have seen the signs way ahead. You must be conscious of these things. Business owners, CEOs who is listening to me right now, you must be able to see the signs way ahead and proactively plan towards eliminating these eventualities. If you cannot eliminate it, you should be able to learn to manage it. However, do not hire out of the fact that you are reacting to a situation, but rather be proactive in your hiring process. Hence, the importance of what human resource planning function within your organization. Good. Now, we have this case study that I want us to discuss. Now, in making your response, you could drop your comments, your answers at the comment section while you are taking this session, or alternatively, we discuss this in the live session after the module 2. The module 2 topics have been thoroughly dealt with. Now, suppose a manufacturing company has a project and a surge in production next year. It has been forecasted as that. HR forecasting indicates a need for 50 new machine operators. The current supply forecast shows only 30 qualified employees available within the organization. What should HR programming involve in this case? All right. What HR programming should you involve in filling the gap between the number that is required, that's the demand, versus the current supply of 30? You know, we are shortfall of how many? How many? All right, so put that in the comments or let's discuss in the live forum. Now, this is going to be an interesting case. I look forward to engaging you in answering this case study. Now, in implementing human resource planning, what should we consider? All right, we have planned, right? We have seen the importance of planning. We have programmed it. We have developed the structure and the strategy. Now, what should we do in implementing this program? This plan. We want to convert our plan and our program into action. One, the program, the action points that we must consider is one, recruitment. The recruitment process, selection and placement. The program must look at training and development, retraining for those who are internal, redeployment for those who will be transferred to another department or another location. We will consider the retention plan. How are we going to keep these quality hands? We must also consider redundancy. There are people that are no longer pushing it. They are no longer being productive. What is the problem? Are they tired of the job? Have they outgrown the work? That particular duty and responsibility, are they no longer excited in taking up this duty? What is the solution? Do we move them out? Do we terminate employment? Do we send them for a retraining program so that they can up their game? All right. Then we also must consider succession planning. People are exiting. How do we replace those who are going? All right. Then concerning recruitment, selection, and placement, what should we consider in terms of implementation? Are we to hire new full-time employees or part-time employees when we are experiencing shortage? All right. When we are experiencing shortage, remember we talked about shortage and what? Surplus. So when we are experiencing shortage of employees within an organization, either in a department or the overall organization, do we hire new people? If we are going to hire new people, yes, of course. If we are going to hire new people, the question is, should they be full-time or part-time? Are we going to offer incentives for postponing retirement? For example, there are people, because we know that we are short of staff, like the case study, right? We need 50 people, but we only have 30. Out of the 30, for example, 5 are retiring. Are we going to offer incentives for them to stay an extra 1 year or an extra 5 months or an extra 3 months? So let me give you this real-time example. I'm currently running, as at the time this presentation was made, I'm currently running a project I'm wrapping up. Now, one of the goal of the organization was to find a replacement in the finance department and in the operations department. But upon my exit, these roles are yet to have been filled. So there was an extension of my contract with this organization by 3 months. All right. Now, this is an example of when you have to postpone either retirement or resignation or contract completion timeline. Why? Because we have not been able to achieve our goals, either based on internal factors or based on what? External exigencies. Beautiful. So, will you be willing to offer incentives to postpone some people's retirement so as not to worsen the case of shortage? Then consider to rehiring people who have retired but are not tired. They are very much available to take up roles. Can you bring them in on a part-time basis, not on a full-time basis, on a part-time basis? Or people who have even resigned and left or are available to be rehired on part-time basis, you can also consider that as a factor. Then an attempt to reduce what? Turnover. Reduce the number of people that are exiting, that are leaving the company, pending the time you are able to meet your employee quota per period or find a replacement. Then bring in overtime for present employees. When you have staff shortage, your employees will be overworked. There's no way. Your team members will be overworked. So what should you do? You are to bring in, you can consider giving overtime allowances for employees that are presently with you, so that when you're extending their time, so if we have, for example, 8 hours in a day and you need them to work a 10-hour shift or an 11-hour shift, what happens is that it is ideal, it is fair that you compensate them by giving them an overtime allowance at its work. Then you can subcontract work to other organizations. That's outsource. Okay, so you can always outsource. For example, Lighthouse offers outsourcing solutions to medium scale organizations, small businesses, fast growing businesses, startups, large organizations, large size organizations. Lighthouse HR company offers outsourcing services to such organizations. So yes, as a business owner, if you are here and listening to this session, you can subcontract some of your activities to organizations who are able to help with, to cover up the shortage you have with your employees. Then hire temporary employees, re-engineer them to reduce what? To reduce your need. All right. Now, in cases where you have surplus, what should you do? Initially, we skip, maybe your business or where you work had skipped the HR planning process, and now you have excess staff. A lot of people sitting down doing nothing. What do? Do not replace employees when they leave. All right? When employees leave, don't replace them. Just leave the quota as it is until things balances up. Then offer incentives for early retirement. For shortage, we talked about offering incentives for people postponing their retirement. Now, there are also people who will not mind leaving earlier. Can you offer incentive? Can you suggest that incentives are offered? Then transfer or reassign excess employees. You can transfer them to other locations. You can reassign them to other activities, other tasks. You can, where there are rooms for setting up other side projects, you can reassign them. You can second them to other businesses within or other units within what? The business. Then use slack time for employees, absenteeism, employees training or equipment maintenance. Leverage slack time for employees. All right. So where there are slack time, where people are free, use that opportunity to train them. Use that opportunity to use their availability to maintain the facilities that you have. Reduce work hours. Reducing work hours means that you can even run shift systems. So if you have surplus staff, you can allow a batch of persons to do morning shift, another set of persons to do what? Afternoon shift or evening shifts, okay? Depending on what model of business you are running. You can reduce their work hours, okay? Then you pay off employees that are willing to go, where you have surplus of employees that might be expected within the organization. Now, when you are implementing your HR plan, training and development must be considered. Ensure that the number of employees that are required within the organization are properly inducted, properly trained. Ensure that when staffs are also exiting, you conduct exit interviews or exit training. Identify the resourceful in personnel, conduct training and development programs for these ones. Even people who are slacking on the job, but they have the heart for the job. They have the heart for the job, however they are slacking. What do? Ensure they are empowered via training. Frequency of training and development programs is important. Allocate a budget for it. All right? As an HR practitioner, ensure you do what? Allocate a budget for your training program. Do not wing it. Add it to your planning. That at a particular period, every quarter, every month, I am going to train these people. Allocate it to do what? To allocate a budget for its implementation. Now, in terms of retraining and redeployment, new skill has to be what? Developed. The new skill should be imported to the existing employees. Some employees, you are sending them to another department. You are sending them, you are redeploying them to a different location. Can you retrain them? Please do not send people out there without empowering them with the right skill, knowledge, competencies they need to deliver on the job. Else, it comes back to your table, as inefficiency. And I'm sure you might not want to, won't be happy about that. Now, in retention planning, consider compensation plan, consider performance appraisal plan, Employees who are living and searching for greener pastures, also consider this. A lot of employees out there are looking for better paid employment. Can your organization be that employer brand, or HR practitioners, can you ensure your organization has the best working environment where employees will be happy to stay? Okay, for some of people, although money is a uniform factor for all or for many, all right, there are other factors that keep employees in your place, in your business, where your company is their greener pasture. Okay, beyond the money, there are other key perks, key benefits and compensations that will help them to be retained within your organization. Where there are induction crises, plan that. All right, to be able to retain quality hands within your business, HR practitioners, hear me. Ensure that your induction program is thorough, is robust, is complete, is at its best. You have all of this information and knowledge properly transferred to the new hire or to the staff. Where you have shortages, please plan for shortage. Where you have unstable recruits, people who just stay within 3 months, they exit, probation is not over, they exit. Anyway, you would have seen this while you were conducting interviews right from the beginning. So also consider that as an important plan in the human resource planning process. Then downsizing plan. Consider a downsizing plan. Who is redundant? What area are they showing redundancy? When did it start? What's the current status? And how will you be able to do what? Eliminate it. Then plans for redevelopment or retraining. I mentioned it already. Once you see redundancy, can you retrain? Can you find out the reason for redundancy? Okay, and find a way to up their gain. Then steps should be taken to help redundant employees. Do not abandon them. Do not just leave them to be on their own. Ensure that they are supported. Finding new jobs. All right, so when you are downsizing, some organizations take it as a point of duty to find new jobs. So that's one of the culture that we operate with at Lighthouse HR Company. All right, when an employee is exiting, we make it a point of duty to inform them. All right, especially if they're exiting properly. Not that you wake up one morning and decide that, oh, I don't want to work with Lighthouse again, I leave after breaking all of the regular structure of exiting. You know, in lieu of notice, you just decide that you want to leave and all that. Although it's not proper, we also cannot eliminate such instances where things like that happen in any organization. However, it must be checkmate. Okay, it must be your structure must not accommodate or should not accommodate such. Okay, we see it as indiscipline. However, there are cases where it just but must happen. All right, and when it happens, how will you be able to cover that gap? Okay, so you must help with redundant staff, help in finding new jobs, for exiting staff if you have the capacity to do so. Then consider policies for declaring redundancies. So you can't wake up one morning and say, you, A staff, B staff, C, you are leaving because you are redundant. Find out the cases, what is your policy say about declaring redundancy. Now, where you do not have policies about declaring redundancies within certain employees, sit together, develop a redundancy policy, share it with the management. Once it is approved for implementation, share it with members of staff, train them on it, and then revisit the issue, revisit the case. All right, now managerial succession planning, managerial succession planning, you must consider it. We have talked about demand analysis. Okay, so you must be able to analyze the demands. What do we need? What kind of staff do we need? How many of them? What quality of staff do we need within this organization? Then consider auditing your existing executives, whether be it executives or your junior staff, junior management, artisans, contractors. Do an periodic audit on every existing staff within the organization. Planning of an individual career path is also important for human resource planning. You can help your staff to plan their career path, especially those who have shown interest in building a career with your organization. Consider career counseling, plan it into your system. Consider accelerated promotions. There are people, because based on your demand analysis, your demand forecast, some people might need to be promoted 2 or 3 times almost quickly, within a year, less than a year, okay, to be able to cover up certain positions in some cases. So consider that in your planning. We have performance related training and development. We cannot overemphasize this. Training is important for you to maintain quality hand, so you also must plan it. Then plan strategic recruitment. You cannot just wing recruitment. You cannot just decide to recruit today and pick up anybody on the job, in the job market, on the streets of job searching. You can't afford to just pick just anybody. You must plan your recruitment strategically. Then consider planning how best to fill the open positions within the organization. Now we have done all the planning, we have considered the recruitment programs, we have started recruiting. How do we evaluate and control what we have put in place? How do we report our plan? How do we report the processes? One thing you must consider is that you must identify who are in the post and those who are in the pipeline. All right? There are people who are in the post. There are people who are ready to take up the job. There are people who are ready to be given an offer. There are people who have taken up our offer and they're in the know. They are already candidates are being engaged, whether internally or externally. They are already in the know. Oh, we are taking up the offer. But the point is that, do we also have a report for people in the pipeline? People who we can easily reach out to if they are available to replace people who are leaving. All right. Our second or third best group of persons who were interviewed and who can be considered as a potential employee in the nearest future. So we keep them in view. All right. Now, secondly, report employment costs against the budget. Report your planning cost against the budget. So when you are establishing a reporting procedure for the human resource planning process or function, one, I said you must be able to identify those we are going to hire and those we are going to keep in view for future purposes. Those in the pipeline, you must be able to, your report must also consider employment cost. Remember, I mentioned that every HR practitioner must start thinking like a business owner. Always have cost management in mind. Always have in mind that the business must make profit and must be productive. So you must think like a business owner. You must think like someone who is considering profitability and productivity. So you're asking yourself, all my plans, function, processes, programs, will they bring profitability to the business and productivity to the team? Let your report also show this. And then we are considering employment costs against the budget and trends of wastage and employment ratios. So it's important for you to know that, to ask yourself, are we wasting funds here? Are we going to waste funds with this person? Are we going to waste time and effort, material with this individual? If we take up this particular individual when it comes to recruitment, are we going to waste our effort? Are we going to go back to square one in the next 3 months? Based on the responses and the trajectory of both the CV and the person's work history, how long will this person stay with us? So it's not just about filling the position now. It is ensuring you are able to answer the question. One of the easy way to identify if a candidate will be staying with you long enough is to see how long they have stayed in the past 10 years. Now, I was answering a question for an international offer, and one of the questions they asked while I was filling that form was that in the past 10 years of your career life, how many organizations have you worked with? Can you mention them with dates? So by the time I looked at 10 years, I was answering 2 organizations on full-time basis and 1 or 2 of them on part-time basis. But they wanted full-time, not the contracts. And it's 2, all right? So will that answer be able to stand for them? Are they looking for people who can stay long in an organization up to 10, 15 years, up to 7 years, up to 5 years, or people who live like nomads? Every other month, you are off to a new place. So this report will help you to manage your cost versus budget, doing your comparison, and then consider your employment ratios with those you are bringing on board. After all of this, I do not want you to put aside this one important factor. How do I manage the barriers in planning? And this is it, and the final point for the Human Resource Planning Training Program. People will question the importance of making HR plans, including your employer, who is not already used to doing what? Who is not already used to planning. So when you bring up the idea of we need to start planning our HR processes, our HR practices for the future, people will question the importance, and you must be able to defend why HR planning is what is very important, okay? For formulation of strategies, for meeting organizational goals, HR practitioners must know that HR planning cannot be put under the shelf. You cannot put it under the table. You must be able to work with this function. HR practitioners are perceived as people who are more interested in personnel matters than in business management. That's why I said that the moment we had taken the human resource business partnership course, it is important that you start thinking as a business owner, as a business professional, or as a business manager, okay? Let us change the trajectory where HR practitioners are just individuals who are centered or concerned about personnel, people, staffs, employment, and salaries, as against what? The business side of business. Okay, I like this summary where they said, I'm interested, as much as I am interested in people's business, in the business of people, I'm also much interested in the business of the business, that is the profitability of that business. Now, HR information is often incompatible with information used to formulate strategy, all right? But we must change that trajectory. We have a lot of people out there who are biased, who have said that every information that has to do with HR has nothing to do with strategy formulation, but that is wrong. With this information and this training in the Human Resource and Practice Program, we have tried as much as possible to eliminate such biases. By completing this program, at the end of this program, you will be able to stand as an HR practitioner that can formulate strategies for the success of business and provide key data and information that will help you in making solid decisions to move the business forward. Now, we have conflict of interest as against between short-term goals and long-term goals in meeting HR needs. Okay, but one of the things we can do to solve that conflict is to break these needs into immediate needs, short-term needs, mid-term needs, and long-term needs. Okay, so do not let any form of conflict. If you are able to do an analysis and put together, label your needs as our immediate needs, 1 to 2 weeks, 1 to 3 months. We have the mid-term needs, depending on what your business calendar is speaking or talking, and then you have the long-term needs, depending on the period, the year that is called long-term for your business. Then also conflicts between quantitative and quality approach of the human resource planning. The quality of planning your HR versus the quantity of persons you are bringing in must align. Ensure that there are no conflicts within it, that the disparities are practically non-existent. Okay, that thin line cannot be seen. So if you have been able to put a quality to the approach of your planning, it must be able to translate to quality engagement for candidates as well as employees that are involved in the process or in that business. The non-involvement of operating managers, rendering the human resource planning who have rendered the human resource planning ineffective. So all managers that are involved in HR planning must ensure that their operations are effective. At first glance, once you speak, except employers who have an understanding of the critical aspects of planning, one key thing that you must understand, you must help in ensuring that the managers who are rendering the human resource planning process effective or are engaging in such processes ensure that is what effective. All right, so it is important that we do not discard human resource planning process or the function. It is key, and we should consider it as first before we enter or engage every other function within the organization. Thank you for listening. See you in the live weekend forum, and we will be willing and interested in reading your comments at the bottom of this session. Thank you, and see you in the next class.